full of right versus left. You've arrived at the intersection of right versus wrong. A new voice, a new conversation. The Alan Hunt Show starts now.
Welcome home. This is the Alan Hunt radio program. You know me, you know the show, not about right and left, the only place on talk radio that is all about what's right and what is wrong. And I want you to picture in your mind's eye, Private First Class Bradley Manning. 22 years old, he had no idea what the wrath of the United States government and the United States American people was going to be. Private First Class, I mean, he's a young guy, baby-faced, 22 years old, and he's sitting in confinement in Kuwait. He's been there 7 months. He sits accused of taking a little tiny memory stick and stealing 1.6 gigabytes of data. About 250,000 dispatches, cables, and documents of the State Department. Unauthorized downloads of classified information. The feds, at least so far as we can tell, really think it all kind of hinges on this one cat. 22-year-old Private First Class who said that he had unprecedented access to classified networks 14 hours a day, 7 days a week for 8 months. Downloaded countless State Department documents. Downloaded the video of the Apache helicopter that was gunning down civilians in Baghdad. And here's what Bradley meant. I mean, he's sitting in a military prison, in all likelihood in solitary confinement, awaiting a court-martial hearing after the turn of the year. And he says these things. I find his quotes fascinating. I mean, have you been keeping up with this? I mean, I'm just trying to put myself in his mind. Can you imagine what it's like to be this? I mean, he's a kid, like a college senior. He's 22. It's just kind of hard to imagine what was going through his mind. He says, I would come in with music on a CD labeled with something like Lady Gaga. I'd erase the music, then I'd write a compressed split file. Nobody suspected a thing. I listened and lip-synced to Lady Gaga's Telephone while exfiltrating, I love that word, exfiltrating, possibly the largest data spillage in American history. And then he told his correspondent, one of the guys who outed him on all this, Hillary Clinton and several thousand diplomats around the world are going to have a heart attack when they wake up one morning and find an entire repository of classified foreign policy is available in searchable format to the public. Everywhere there's a U.S. Post, there's a diplomatic scandal that will be revealed. Worldwide anarchy in CSV format. It's beautiful and horrifying. So this is a guy who knew what he was doing. He turned dark side on it somehow. Signed the oath, part of the military, somehow as a Private First Class had extraordinary access to data. And here's what he says. Information should be free. It belongs in the public domain. Reminds me of a jerk who used to show up for personnel meetings at the church. Told you about him before. I was a pastor for 20 years, and as a pastor in the Methodist Church, you had sort of a personnel, human resources committee that you dealt with stuff like benefits for people, their vacation. If Tony's wife had cancer, you talked about that. If Tony's got job performance issues, you talked about that. So you had advisory people and people in the congregation as a part of that. But I had this one jerk who kept showing up at the meetings. I demand to get to know everything because this is the church and everybody should know everything. We're like, dude, we're talking about personnel. We're talking about people's lives here. We're talking about private, confidential information. You don't just share this. That the pastor has learned that Tony, I don't know, whatever the custodian is, having an affair with Lucy, the children's minister. I mean, you don't share that to everybody. Hey, you handle people's stuff. There's just stuff that doesn't belong in the public domain. But this guy thinks all information should be out there. Interestingly, today, did you see where I keep saying Wikipedia because I am such a moron. WikiLeaks, did you see where their web servers pretty much got shut down? They did something through. Evidently, Amazon hosts some of their web servers. and Amazon, under immense pressure from the federal government, can you imagine those phone calls? Said, this is violating our morals to allow, in our conscience, to allow WikiLeaks to have server and host access through us, so we're cutting that off. And so now everybody's weighing in. Everybody's getting on the moral high horse here. And Mike Huckabee, former presidential candidate, former governor of Arkansas, former Baptist preacher, I might add, discussed today, what do you do with Bradley Manning? Private first class, Bradley Manning, 22 years old, sitting awaiting his court-martial. What do you do with this kid who's responsible for, he's right, it's informational anarchy.
They've put American lives at risk. They've put relationships that will take decades to rebuild at risk. And they knew full well that they were handling sensitive documents. They were entrusted. And anyone who had access to that level of information was not only a person who understood what their rules were, but they also signed under oath a commitment that they would not violate it. They did. And I believe they have committed treason against this country, and any lives they endangered, they're personally responsible for, and the blood is on their hands.
So Huckabee's trying to come out and posture. He's positioning himself for a presidential run. He's been accused of being soft because of the 1,000 pardons he made when he was the governor of Arkansas. So he wants to bring the heavy hammer down on the head of WikiLeaks and Bradley Manning, the leaker himself. Governor Huckabee wants to bring the heavy hammer.
Whoever in our government leaked that information is guilty of treason. And I think anything less than execution is too kind a penalty.
Wow. Pretty harsh words. I mean, here's the guy's a former Baptist pastor. I think anything less than execution is too kind of a penalty. Really? Meanwhile, he was, right after that, he was then doing an interview promoting his 2 Christmas books, A Simple Christmas and Can't Wait Till Christmas. Anybody else find the irony there? Angry rage and desire for execution of Bradley Manning, then paired with, hey, but buy my Christmas book. It's all about the joy of Jesus. Does the irony strike you there? I'm for coming down heavy on Bradley Manning, absolutely. But killing him? Executing him? Nah, I don't think so. I got the perfect punishment for Bradley Manning. The perfect punishment is spending the rest of his life in a 5-foot by 5-foot cell, bunk beds with Major Nadal Hassan. Every single day for the rest of their lives, the Islamic terrorists who killed 13 fellow Americans on a military base, Fort Hood, a year ago. 5-foot by 5-foot cell with him and Bradley Manning, 22-year-old WikiLeaker. Got a leaky conscience. Put him in a cell, throw away the key, have at it, boys. Drive each other batty. You gonna put Bradley Manning to death if he's guilty? Not me. The death penalty is wrong, and it's wrong in every circumstance, including this one. Call me now. 877-70-ALLEN. Really, Major Nadal Hassan. That's a creepy guy. In his wheelchair on the bottom bunk, Bradley Manning on the top bunk. See you, boys. 877-70-ALLEN. Earn